Imagine yourself being pulled into a 30-inch pipe, caught in a swirling chaos of water, tools, and men, all hurtling along underwater in pitch-black darkness. You barely grasp what's happening as you struggle to hold your breath, convinced that you'll drown in mere moments. Out of the 5 men sucked into the pipeline that day, only one would survive to recount the terrifying ordeal, all captured by a GoPro camera attached to one of the diver's suits. The recorded video and audio reveal a terrifying sequence of events. This is the tragic account of the Paria Diving Disaster.
Your eyes burning, your throat burning, your ears ringing. Unbelievable nightmare.
On February 25th, 2022, what started as an ordinary workday for the men of LCS quickly turned into a nightmare. They were diving at Pointe-à-Pierre to perform maintenance on a pipeline for Paria Fuel, a government-owned oil company in Trinidad and Tobago. For professional divers Kazim Ali Jr., Yusuf Henry, Fyzal Kurban, Rishi Nagassar, and Chris Boodram, it seemed like just another routine workday. They were assigned to work on a section of an idle pipeline. This pipeline had a U-shape and connected 2 critical points, berth 5, where oil tankers dock to unload their oil, and berth 6, where the oil flows into the refinery. Their task was straightforward, ensuring this crucial link between the tanker dock and the refinery was in good condition. Little did they know, this ordinary day would soon turn into a disaster. To get started on their tasks for the day, the divers needed to isolate the pipe from the ocean water to reach the areas requiring repair. To achieve this, they used a special habitat bell, placing it over the top of the pipe. This ingenious system pushed the water away from the pipe, creating a dry space for them to work in. This dry zone allowed them to perform their repairs safely and efficiently without the interference of the surrounding seawater. Once air was pumped inside to push the water out, the men could stand on a ledge and work in what essentially became a hyperbaric chamber. This setup allowed them to remove their diving gear and safely use tools to perform complex repairs and maneuvers together as a team. One of their key tasks was to remove an inflatable plug at berth 6. This plug had been inserted nearly 2 weeks earlier to safeguard the pipe's oil contents and prevent any hydrocarbons from leaking out. Acting as an airtight barrier, the plug withstood the pressure from the habitat chamber above. To remove it, they needed to loosen the valve, so they retrieved a wrench to get the job done. This step was crucial in maintaining the pipeline's integrity and ensuring no harmful substances escaped into the ocean. Kazim Ali passed the wrench up to the 4 men working around the pipe, then climbed onto the ledge to remove his diving gear. As soon as they opened the valve, an unexpected and powerful force surged through the habitat. Water rushed in with incredible speed, flooding the chamber and surging down the pipe. In an instant, the men and all their equipment were swept into a chaotic, swirling torrent, pulled violently down the pipeline in a terrifying underwater tornado. The sudden surge of water was so unexpected that the men could barely comprehend what was happening in that disastrous moment. Miraculously, they ended up in a spot with a small air pocket, allowing them to breathe. The GoPro video showed the tense moments just before they were swept away, capturing their confusion and urgency. Then, the screen went completely black, and all that could be heard was the chaotic rustling and movement as they were pulled into the darkness. It's startling to hear their voices as they began shouting to each other inside a pipe that should have been filled with crude oil.
I'm 35 too! I'm trying to come up! Yeah!
The terrible irony is that the very air allowing them to breathe was also the cause of the water tornado that had swept them there. How did this happen? The inflatable plug they were removing was meant to separate 1,200 barrels of oil from the air and surrounding ocean water. When the plug was loosened, the balance was disrupted, creating the powerful surge that pulled them into the pipe. If things had gone according to plan, they would have simply removed the plug and continued with their scheduled work. The air pressure inside the habitat would have pushed down on a tall column of oil, which would have been evenly distributed between the 2 pipe openings at berth 5 and 6. Nothing unusual there. But unfortunately, they were unaware that there was a pocket of air trapped beneath that plug, and significantly less oil in the length of the pipe than they had anticipated. The moment the plug was deflated, the high-pressure air from the habitat surged down the pipe with incredible force. This sudden release of pressure caused the men, along with their tools and scuba tanks, to be dragged into the 30-inch pipeline by the powerful rush of air. The ocean water rushed in violently, swirling around them in a chaotic whirlwind of air and water, trapping them in its grasp. In the midst of swirling ocean water and scattered tools, 5 men struggled to catch their breath, their fight for survival feeling like an eternity. Eventually, the chaos subsided, and they found themselves in a small pocket of air. Chris Boodram, the sole survivor, vividly recounted the unimaginable experience of being sucked into an oil pipeline, a moment etched into his memory forever.
Within a second, it was like tornado. Everything just spinning and beating you up, and it happened so fast. You couldn't react. After that, all I remember, I didn't even remember actually getting pulled in the pipe. I just remember going hurled through the pipe at unbelievable speeds. I couldn't hold my breath no longer, man. Truth. And you're holding your breath for too long, after a while, your body, your lungs just fight to try to gas a breath, and when you're forcing your airways close, you see a noise. Your body suffering to pull air. An unbelievable nightmare. Your eyes burning. Every time you try to open your eyes, it's burning. You're pitch black, you can't see nothing. Your throat burning. Your ears ringing. Your body sore.
As the tumultuous journey came to an end, the men quickly assessed their surroundings, checking in with each other to gauge their well-being and ensure that all 5 of them had made it through the harrowing ordeal. They took a moment to gather their thoughts, their hearts still pounding from the adrenaline rush of survival, grateful to find themselves alive and together despite the terrifying circumstances they had just endured. Their voices echoed back and forth as they shouted, desperately trying to locate each other and confirm that they were indeed inside the pipe together. The situation felt surreal, almost too unbelievable to be true, yet the grim reality sank in. Amidst the chaos, grasping their whereabouts within the pipeline proved challenging. Disoriented and shaken, they struggled to gauge how far they had been swept along the pipeline's length, the darkness adding to their confusion and uncertainty. Stretching for 1,200 feet, equivalent to the length of 4 football fields, this section of the pipeline was filled with twists and turns, marked by weld seams and support structures. These irregularities created pockets of air along the way. Despite feeling battered and disoriented, the men were relieved to discover that they were all alive. However, amidst their confusion, they couldn't reach a consensus on which direction would lead them back to Berth 6, adding to their dilemma and uncertainty about how to navigate their way out. After a lengthy discussion, they agreed to join forces and shuffle together as a unified group towards one end of the pipeline. Every inch of the pipe was smeared with thick, slippery oil sludge, making progress incredibly strenuous. They grappled with broken bones, bruised organs, oil stinging their eyes and nostrils, all compounded by the enveloping darkness. After an exhausting hour of struggling, they stumbled upon a startling obstacle that halted their progress. As they pressed on, they noticed with growing concern that the seawater level inside the pipe was steadily rising. They struggled to keep their heads above the water, but the leader at the front of the group realized that his face was now mere inches away from the top of the pipe. It was becoming increasingly clear that they couldn't continue in these conditions. Some of the men were severely injured and could barely move any longer. Chris Boodram and Kazim Ali, positioned at the forefront of the group, led the way forward, grappling with the mounting challenges they faced. Yusuf, Fyzal, and Rishi followed closely behind Chris and Kazim in the pipe. With the water level rising and their options dwindling, Chris and Kazim made a difficult decision. They would attempt to hold their breath and search for another pocket of air. Promising their companions that they would do everything in their power to find help, the 2 men resolved to venture forward. With determined resolve, they lifted their faces above the water for as long as they could manage, then plunged beneath the surface, swimming ahead in search of a lifeline. Their relentless effort led them to discover a second pocket of air, situated nearer to the riser pipe that could potentially serve as their path to freedom. Their spirits soared as they stumbled upon 2 of their scuba tanks resting in this area, a hopeful sign of progress. It seemed as though this discovery held the key to their escape. With renewed determination, they almost depleted both oxygen tanks to navigate through the subsequent section. However, Kazim's injuries were worsening, hindering his ability to move swiftly and casting a shadow of concern over their chances of success. With unity and determination, they collectively concluded that the best course of action was for Chris to take the remaining oxygen and attempt to swim to the end of the pipe in search of help. Positioning the tank in front of his body, he pushed it along as he navigated through the narrow confines of the 2.5-foot tube. As he reached the end of the pipe where the riser was located, a chilling realization dawned upon him, filling him with fear and uncertainty. A wave of dread washed over Chris as he contemplated the possibility that he might have reached berth 5 instead of berth 6. If that were the case, he would ascend nearly 60 feet only to collide with an inflated plug, leaving him stranded without air, his tank nearly depleted. With a heavy heart, he uttered a prayer and propelled himself upwards, determined to find his way to the surface. After enduring over 2 grueling hours within the confines of the pipe, Chris was overcome with relief when he finally broke through the surface of the oily water, realizing he had indeed reached berth 6. Frantically banging and shouting, Chris desperately tried to capture the attention of the rest of the ship's crew. After what felt like an eternity, one of the searchers spotted him and aided him in clambering out using a sturdy chain. Overwhelmed and utterly drained, Chris relayed the crucial information to his rescuer, that there were air pockets within the pipeline, and that all the men were still alive. With this vital message delivered, he was swiftly transported to the hospital, ensuring that the rescuers were aware of the survivors' plight and urgent need for assistance. Until that moment, the remaining members of LMX had been filled with uncertainty about the fate of their colleagues. They had feared the worst, assuming that the pipeline was flooded with oil and that the men would have succumbed to drowning within minutes. Aware that the oxygen tanks typically provided only an hour of air, they had been fraught with worry as more than 2 hours passed since the men were pulled into the pipeline. However, this revelation brought a ray of hope, a glimmer that perhaps, against all odds, the men were still alive. As soon as Chris detailed the dire situation, divers in the water began tapping on the pipe at various points, hoping for a response. And indeed, they received taps in return from within the pipeline. Imagine the flood of relief that washed over the trapped men, knowing that someone on the outside was aware of their predicament. They could take solace in the fact that a team of professional divers and an array of specialized equipment were on the ship above, ready to mount a rescue effort. Hour after agonizing hour, they clung to hope, waiting for any sign of rescue, a flicker of light, the metallic clang of descending oxygen tanks. But all they encountered was darkness and silence. With each passing moment, their injuries from the initial rush of water weighed heavily upon them, compounded by the oppressive struggle to draw breath in the thick, oily air of the pipeline. As time wore on, the carbon dioxide levels in the confined space rose, making each breath an increasingly daunting task, exacerbating their already dire situation. And so they waited, clinging to the hope of rescue with each passing moment. Despite the puzzling circumstances surrounding the failed rescue attempt, the heartbreaking truth remained that these men were only a stone's throw away from potential salvation, yet no help ever arrived. In their agony, they banged on the walls of the pipe, hoping to attract attention, and tried in vain to navigate towards the exit. The weight of their predicament must have been crushing, especially after enduring days trapped in the suffocating confines of the oily pipeline. As the hours dragged on with no sign of rescue, questions swirled about the response, or lack thereof, from LNX Paria Fuel, their sister company Heritage, and the Coast Guard. Opinions were divided, with some accusing Paria of blocking divers from entering the pipe to rescue the trapped men. Paria countered, arguing that there was no safe plan to extract the men without endangering more lives. Amidst the uncertainty, doubts arose about the fate of the trapped men. Some speculated that they were already dead, and the banging heard from within the pipe was attributed to something else entirely. At 5 o'clock on Friday, when Chris Boodram was rescued, it was confirmed that the 4 men were still alive. Numerous witnesses attested to hearing banging noises emanating from within the pipes for nearly 48 hours prior to the cessation of the sounds, which tragically coincided with the recovery of the bodies. Following the tragic event, 2 separate autopsies were conducted. Yet they yielded conflicting conclusions regarding the time of death. What remained evident, however, was that all the men had been alive until various points on Saturday, with some potentially surviving until Monday. The exact cause of their demise remained shrouded in uncertainty, whether they succumbed to their injuries, depleted their air supply, or tragically drowned while attempting to reach one of the pipe exits, leaving lingering questions and a profound sense of loss in their wake. In response to the tragedy, a commission of inquiry was established in Trinidad and Tobago to investigate the circumstances surrounding the incident. This panel of experts was tasked with delving into the details and uncovering the truth behind what had transpired. Anticipation grew as the public eagerly awaited the release of the commission's findings, scheduled to be unveiled in August of 2023.
Yusuf! Oh, Yusuf! How long you have to walk before you meet Fyzal? You and Fyzal was together all the time?
Right now.
Who else with you?
We are Fyzal alone.
Kaz with you?
Right there.
Right there where? Kaz, everything alright with you?
No.
Any items break?
All there.
Your leg, alright. Fyzal, anything happen to you?
Yeah.
A fight?
No way.
Yusuf, anything happen to you?
Yeah, boy.
What happened?
Upon break.
Alright.